They say some monsters don't lurk in the shadows, they live right next door. This is the terrifying true story of the Daraya Khan brothers, two men who turned graveyards into hunting grounds and their neighbors into prey. If you think you're safe after you're buried, think again. In the small, forgotten town of Daraya Khan, Pakistan, the graveyard lies just beyond a twisted neem tree. In 2011, a young woman named Sarah Parveen died of throat cancer. Her family buried her with prayers and tears, but when her brother Ijaz returned the next day, his heart froze. Sarah's grave was disturbed. The soil was loose, scattered like someone had clawed through it at night. Ijaz dug with trembling hands. The grave was empty. His sister's body had vanished. The village whispered of black magic, grave robbers, and worse. No one knew what was waiting under that neem tree. With the grave empty, Sarah's grieving family ran to the local police. Days turned into weeks. No sign of Sarah's body. Then one night, the old graveyard keeper came forward, eyes sunken, hands shaking. He told police something they couldn't believe. 1 year earlier, on a moonless night, he'd seen two strange brothers perched in the branches of that same neem tree. They sat there for hours, whispering, staring down at fresh graves. When he tried to confront them, they slipped into the shadows, but not before he heard them say, "The graves talk to us. They tell us their secrets." The keeper's voice broke as he confessed. He'd seen them digging, dragging heavy burlap sacks under the cover of darkness, but fear had sealed his lips, until now. And now that fear was about to spill into the streets. Police took the trembling graveyard keeper seriously. That same night, they tracked the brothers to a crumbling house at the edge of the village, its windows blacked out, its yard overgrown. Inside, the air was thick with a stench no one could describe. Neighbors said they'd often heard muffled screams at night, women, children, but were too afraid to look. When the officers forced the door open, they found one brother asleep on a dirty floor, the other nowhere to be seen. As they crept through the rooms, their boots stuck to stained floors, and then they reached a locked door. Behind it, silence. When they smashed the lock, the smell hit them first. Rotten, metallic, unmistakable. In the center of the room sat a massive iron pot, bubbling. Next to it, a bloodied cleaver, a butcher's block, and a burlap sack that twitched ever so slightly. An officer lifted the sack. Inside was a partial corpse, pieces missing. When they demanded answers, the brother only smiled, a smile that promised more horror than any words could. When Inspector Bhatti leaned over the iron pot, his heart nearly stopped. Chunks of meat floated in the thick broth, but these weren't animal bones. They were unmistakably human. Bhatti's men found scraps of clothes in the corner, pieces of jewelry, trinkets belonging to the missing girl, Sarah Parveen. The young woman who was supposed to be resting in her grave was instead simmering in this monstrous stew. They dragged the brother to his feet. He muttered that it wasn't his fault. They had to do it. They had to feed him. But when pressed, he refused to say who he was. Every question about the missing limb led to the same answer. He's hungry. We must eat or we get sick. He won't let us live if we don't obey. The villagers gathered outside, whispers turning to gasps as word spread. Their children's graves, their mothers, their sisters. Could they be next? Inside, the investigators stumbled on old ritual papers, scribbled curses, upside-down verses, and strange symbols caked in dried blood. The brothers hadn't just been grave robbers. They were performing something older, darker. No one dared to utter the word curse, but in that house, everyone felt it breathing down their necks. As Inspector Bhatti dug deeper, he discovered that the brothers' evil acts didn't start in that rotting house. The real horror was rooted under an ancient neem tree that still stands near the graveyard. The graveyard's caretaker, trembling as he spoke, confessed to seeing the two brothers perched in that tree night after night. Not once or twice, but for years. Sometimes they would sit there, unmoving for hours, whispering to the graves below. Locals believed the neem tree was a doorway, a bridge between restless souls and something far more sinister. When asked what they did up there, the caretaker's voice cracked. They say the dead talk to them. They say the tree feeds them secrets. Which graves are fresh, which bodies are ripe. The villagers who once walked the graveyard paths at night now locked their doors before sunset. They said they could hear the low chants drifting through the branches, prayers twisted backward, curses carried by the wind. Inspector Potty knew that if he didn't act now, no one would dare bury their loved ones here again. But stopping the brothers meant fighting not just two men, but the shadows that clung to them. Outside, the whispers of the neem tree never stopped. Some say, even now, if you stand beneath it in the dead of night, you can hear Sarah Parveen crying for her missing bones. As Inspector Potty built his case, the final pieces of this nightmare came from a single name whispered in dread, the Tantric. Years ago, before the brothers became what they were, they visited a dark hermit living on the outskirts of Islamabad. Desperate for power, they listened as the Tantric spun a promise. Eat the flesh of the dead, bathe in their filth, bind your soul to the grave's secrets, and you will never hunger for anything else. It started as a dare, a grave robbed in silence, a stolen bone boiled in a rusted pot. But the taste of death did something to their minds and their stomachs. Their bodies no longer craved goat or chicken. They craved the soft, rotting meat of the buried. Years later, they would cover themselves in the filth they worshipped, believing it bound them to the spirits. They told the inspector, "If we stop, he will come for us, he who watches from the tree." When Potty asked, "Who is he?" they fell silent, eyes wide with the same hunger that had devoured their souls. And in that silence, the inspector realized he wasn't just hunting two cannibals. He was chasing a curse born from shadows, roots, and whispered lies that could never be killed. In the coming days, the village elders would burn offerings beneath the neem tree, but the crying from the graves only grew louder. When Inspector Potty stepped out of the brothers' cell that night, the air in the station felt thick, like something unseen had settled in the corners, watching. He knew they had to act fast, before the village ripped the cannibal brothers apart with their bare hands, or worse, before the brothers escaped and vanished into the night like feral dogs. A week later, the smell returned, a sour, rotting stench drifting through the narrow alleys of Darya Khan, waking old fears that had never truly gone away. The villagers followed it. It led them right back to that dark, broken house where the brothers had been seen lurking after their short release. Bhati, now armed with a full unit, kicked the door in. They found Arif first, crouched on the floor beside a battered cooking pot, muttering prayers to the thing he claimed lived in the neem tree. The pot was still warm. Floating inside was something that made even the most hardened constable gag. Strips of flesh, slick with old blood, bobbing beside fragments of a child's tiny bones. When they dragged Arif out, he shrieked like an animal. He swore they were hungry, always hungry, and that the grave's voice never stopped whispering recipes in his ear. But it was the back room that made Potty's blood run cold. There, they found the older brother, Farman. He was not cooking. He was sharpening a rusty cleaver. On the floor beside him lay a burlap sack, writhing. Inside, a child, still breathing, tears mixing with the dust. Potty ordered the men to drag the brothers away before the mob outside could tear the house down brick by brick. Even then, the brothers didn't scream for mercy. They only begged to be buried under the neem tree, where the whispering voice would keep feeding them in the dark. When dawn broke over Darya Khan that final time, the villagers hoped the nightmare was buried forever. The brothers were locked away. The graveyard was patrolled day and night, and new laws were drafted to keep such horrors from happening again. But horror, like a curse, never really dies. It sleeps, buried under the same dirt where the victims now rest. The neem tree, once just a silent witness, became a shrine to fear. Old women warn children, never stand too close at night. They say its roots drink the sins of the earth, and its branches cradle the spirits that can't move on. Locals swear that when the wind blows through its leaves, you can hear it, the faint scraping of nails against old wood. A low voice, hoarse and wet, murmuring secrets of flesh and bone. A whisper that tempts the desperate and the damned. Decades later, the house where it all happened still stands, broken, blackened, a wound that the village won't let heal. No family lives there, no light shines from its windows, and yet, every few years, someone dares to step inside. Thrill seekers, lost travelers, people who think monsters are just bedtime stories. But the monsters are waiting. In the hollow rooms, under the rotting floorboards, they wait. And if you stand at the broken window when the moon is thin, you might just see two shadows perched in the neem tree, grinning with empty eyes, waiting to feed again. Because once you taste the grave's hunger, you never truly stop. And the whisper, it never dies. If you felt a chill down your spine tonight, share this story with someone who dares to listen alone. Subscribe for more real-life horrors that will haunt your dreams. And remember, stay away from the neem tree, because sometimes the dead are still